Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. But we're going to have a fun conversation over the next 30, 40 minutes or so and really talk about and dig into the real about how entrepreneurs are supported in communities, what public officials can do, what nonprofits can do, and what rests on corporate responsibility to really invest in communities. So thank you for joining us today. As Quentin said, I'm Robbie Shapira. I lead our diverse customer segments growth work in consumer, small, and business banking. It means literally nothing to you. What it means I do is, if you think about a bank like Wells Fargo with over 30 million customers, we have a responsibility, especially at Wells Fargo, where disproportionately our customers are diverse. We are one of the largest banks in very diverse cities, like here in the DMV, in Los Angeles, in Houston, in Atlanta, and my team owns the responsibility for how we show up for those diverse communities. So how do we support women-owned businesses? Like publishing the source of truth of women-owned business called the Impact of Women-Owned Business Report. The 2025 one comes out on Tuesday. It's called the Impact of Women-Owned Business Report. So if you want to pull it, we will do a press release on that day. I'll quote a little bit from it today in our conversation. But also something as simple as when you show up at a bank, does it feel comfortable? And that sometimes has to do with the sentiment of the banker across from you and how we create that environment, but it's also the products and services. How do we open up lending more to diverse communities that had, over time been the subject of discrimination and bias? And so that is what my team does every day. And so I'm very proud to join you for this conversation today and to introduce an incredible panel. And Bria, I will pass it to you first to share more about yourself.
Sure. I have to say I'm super glad to be on this panel with you because you make it very comfortable. And that means that I can use words that I'm comfortable with and I don't have to use fancy mayor language. Pardon me saying that.
You haven't met us yet.
My name is Bria Hodge. I am the Director of Small Business Development at the Latino Economic Development Center, or LEDC, because we are not going to say that full name the whole time. I have a background also as an entrepreneur, and that's how I kind of stumbled into the community development realm, figuring out how to start my businesses. And a lot of people that look like me trying to start businesses, we don't have an Uncle Bob that we can call and ask for a seed loan or a couple thousand. We don't have that experience in our family. So that's what drives me in doing this work and being on this panel is how can we support people like that? So the Latino Economic Development Center, we are a community development financial institution, or a CDFI. We're 33 years old, and we were born out of the Mount Pleasant riots in D.C. There was a Latino man that was shot, and because of that, there was a Latino task force that was like, okay, how are we going to make sure that we have the economic advancement that we need? And LEDC was born. So now we serve, we do housing counseling, we do tenant services, we do small business development, my amazing team. We do small business lending, so we're an SBA lender, financial empowerment as well. And then one of my favorite things is, born out of COVID, we also did grant disbursements, our direct community investments. And we were able to, Nicole, my director of development, will tell me it's 100 million in grant disbursements. So I am very honored to be on this panel and to be speaking with these esteemed folks.
Thank you, Bria. It just makes perfect sense. And thank you. I didn't know that history of your organization. But on the eve of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s celebration of this coming Monday, taking tragedy and and building towards love and support in a community, I feel like that is the essence. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
We are so proud to be joined by Mayor Rickaman of Columbia, South Carolina. So I will turn it to you, Mayor Rickaman, to share more about you and your amazing city.
Well, great. Thank y'all for being here today. I'm honored to be here. Is it on? Yeah, there we go. I got to just eat it, I guess. Like I said. Yeah,
it's the lesson of the day.
I am not a Broadway actor, and I don't play one on TV, so let's just get that straight. You get what you get here. Now, very excited to be here. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I got into politics because I got frustrated with the system. I opened my first restaurant when I was 24 years old with a handful of credit cards and a prayer, a lot of used equipment, and rolled that into several restaurants, and over the years got into renewable energy, started doing renewable energy, and now I'm currently, we started a bourbon company. I have the first female master distiller from Kentucky as my partner, and we launched this past year. It's called Forbidden, so very excited about this venture, very excited about our partnership, but you know, the small business, the essence of Columbia, it's been the backbone of our Columbia. We're the capital city, but we're not inundated with national corporations and chains. We really are built on small businesses, and there's story after story. And hope to talk a little bit about all the things we've been doing throughout this process. But the one thing that we focused on really is trying to make it easier so people can have opportunities that if you can draw it on a napkin, we can make it a reality. And that's kind of where that's how I started, and that's how I see a lot of people start. But we're a very unique community because we're 6 colleges and universities. I have 2 historic black colleges in my community that are very active with incubators and being very involved. Dr. Artist, who is the president of Benedict College, has been an incredible partner over these last years working together. But we also have a military base, largest training base in the Southeast, Fort Jackson. And what's incredible about that is the exposure that we get from Fort Jackson. 45,000 recruits a year, 250,000 family members come through, almost 9,000 families living now. But what's interesting is 7 out of 10 families in the military that are retiring there are calling Columbia home. So these are all folks who are about to start their second career. And a lot of these folks have been working on napkin ideas for a long time, so helping them embrace that. So look forward to some questions here, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on. But that's a snapshot of Columbia, South Carolina.
That was great. Thank you, Mayor Rickaman. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you for living the idea of women entrepreneurs. I mean, even in your partnerships, that's incredible to hear. And
I'm going
congratulations.
to share some great statistics about women-owned business here in Columbia shortly.
I look forward to it. We are incredibly privileged to have Mayor Leonardo Williams of Durham. And Mayor Williams, another entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur. So would you mind telling us more about yourself and your city?
Yeah, well, it's great to be here with everyone. Let me first apologize for yawning. If you know anything about these conferences, that's all I need to say. I saw some of y'all last night, actually. So I'm in that, second kick right now. But yeah, I'm Durham, North Carolina, the Bull City. And, my background is education, 2-time teacher of the year, former principal, associate superintendent. Worked with the governor, did education policy. My wife was frustrated. All right, quit your job. I got it. We're good. She quit her job. She's not the type to stay home. She started catering, and it blew up. And so I went from being in the office every day to being in the office smelling like chicken in a suit. So I actually took a leap and said, I'm going to resign, and we're going to open a restaurant because I can't keep doing your deliveries like this. So I did what you're supposed to do, get a business plan, knock it out, go to the bank, get a loan. I went to the bank, and they said no. Yes. I went to the next bank. They said no. Another bank, they said no. Then I went to a loan agency. They said no. I went to a friend. They said no. I went to this specialized grant something. They said no. And after the 7th no, I said, hell yeah. Mm-hmm. And that meant I went and got my retirement from teaching. And I spent the money you're supposed to use when you're old and gray. It was $26,000. And like Mayor here, I got a trailer on the back of my truck, went all around the state to auctions, used equipment, looked on YouTube, learned how to paint, went to Home Depot, bought the paint, bought the wood, bought pallets from behind a Walmart for $5 each, took them apart, put them back together, made tables. And next thing you know, we had a restaurant. Everything looked tacky because we made it ourselves. But we were debt-free. And we made $40,000 in the first month. Wow. And thank you. I say all of that to say small business owners can pretty much solve any problem. So when you're a small business owner and you become mayor and you get into the world of bureaucracy, that is why we're game changers, because we bring that behavior and that activity there. However, my goal as mayor is to make sure that there are more people that do not have to go through the journey and high risk that my wife and I had to go through. So that's a little bit about my background, and I'm trying my best to be an example for my constituency back home.
Yeah, you obviously are. Thank you, Mayor Williams, for being with us today. I do want to comment on the empty seat. We will be joined by Natalie Madeira Cofield. If you hadn't heard, there's just a street closure or two. One street closure.
Why.
Exactly. So she is en route. She had some family emergency as well, and so she will join us. Please be very warm and welcome her when she gets there. We will integrate her right into the conversation when she arrives. But just wanted to mention that she is en route. But actually, Mayor Williams, if you don't mind me starting with you, Stephanie gave a nice compliment to Quentin as she introduced him and called him a convener. And I think mayors are the ultimate conveners. And actually, as a restaurateur yourself, you had been noticing some trends in your restaurant, and so you convened some restaurant owners. Would you mind telling the room about that and what you've learned, and what are small businesses facing even today?
Yeah, so we initially just opened a restaurant, and then we opened another, and so we have 4 restaurants in a hotel. One in the restaurant and hotel is in Zimbabwe. That is a different situation. But the 3 that I have in Durham, the smaller one is doing fine. My cafe is doing fine, but my larger restaurant, it's like I'm experiencing a local recession. And when I said that part out loud, there were so many, me too, me too, me too. So I convened restaurateurs and small business owners. About 213 people showed up to that meeting, and they all were saying the same thing. And what they were saying was, it's like our, the spending habits have changed, and, like our sales are down. We don't know where people are. The population is rising, but we're seeing less people. What is happening, So I think that we have to, I don't have an answer for what's going on, but I will say that I think we do have to reassess our industry, not just restaurants, but small businesses, because people are starting to utilize, companies that give them convenience more, from DoorDash and, the middleman and the separation of the interaction of people. It's not a bad thing. It's just we have to alter. And so those are some of the things that I'm hearing. Also, we've experienced some, grants from CDFIs post-COVID. I think those funds are drying up. So the resources are looking a little different. The spending habits are a little different, which means we just need to reassess, regroup, and do what we do. Let's find a way.
And it's so powerful when the mayor of the city says, this is a problem and we need to solve it. And before I get to Bria, because I know we're going to talk a little bit about what nonprofits and CDFIs and financial institutions can do. But Mayor Rickman, this has been a passion of yours for a long time, especially women entrepreneurs. Would you mind commenting when you hear things like this in your city? What have you done?
It's interesting is small business folks, the biggest thing is understanding what's available to them and making it easy to start businesses. And we noticed we started changing the way we operate, and we started talking to our employees. First of all, help us figure out why is it so hard for somebody who wants to start a business to get open. So clearing that path. We have the Office of Business Opportunity, incredible director there, Aisha Driggers. I can't say enough about her. But she's able to help people walk through how they open the business, what grants are available, like facade grants, matching grants that we put out to help people redo the front of their businesses. We have a loan pool where we loan money to businesses as well, trying to fill that gap. Streamlining business license so they can do it online, taking those extra steps out of the way to do it. Things like we discovered that there was a sewer connection fee that was in there. So if you took an empty space and you wanted to change it from a retail space to a restaurant, it's going to cost you about $30,000 before you even pulled the permit. Then you got to add the grease trap and everything. So you spent $50,000 before you bought the first piece of furniture. So we eliminated that for any space below 7,500 square feet. To open the door will also help our neighborhoods. Where do people want to build restaurants and change retail and invest? In their community, they want to provide that service. That's their clientele. So taking those hurdles out of the place. What's been interesting is the support and growth of women-owned businesses. And it's been amazing. In Columbia, believe it or not, we've had 30% of our new businesses that all opened up have all been women-owned businesses. We had over 1,100 new business license applications just last year. Why is that? because our community supports it. And what do we do with that? You know, we have these loan programs. We talk about, you know, some of the things that we help them do it, but we support them. We do ribbon cuttings for all these stores. We make sure that we put them out on our social media, talk about them on our podcast, get people to support them, figure out ways we can engage them. Where we've really put an emphasis is where we're spending our dollars as a city. Because we found out that we provide so much service, but we need small business. We have an incredible amount of contracting companies that are owned by women, especially minority-owned women in our business, in our community. And so we've been doing, how do we get more business for them? And part of it is red tape. And so changing what our bonding capacities and credit limits requirements were, looking through not only water and sewer, but looking through our general budget. Where can we go locally? Instituting some open-ended contracts. So working with somebody like, we do repair very well in water and sewer. What we don't do well is go fix that hole afterwards and it stays for months. This is where we're engaging with open-end contracts. So if we're going to spend millions of dollars in our community every year, we want to spend it locally. Why? Local businesses hire here, they stay here, and guess what? They give back. They become part of the community. And so you start adding that, and then this past year we went even a little deeper because we decided to support a nonprofit who was training people in electrical and HVAC. One of the biggest needs that we need, well, we needed it at the city too. So we're supporting them, training folks, and then getting jobs back in the community and funding the circle. And then what we're seeing is these young folks who are taking these jobs, working for somebody else, and then they're coming back and starting their own LLC and hiring those folks that are graduating from these programs. So it's a great cycle, a great partnership.
Yeah. And generational. Yeah, thank you. Agreed. You know, one of the statistics I live by in my line of work is, well, why is it even different for a woman entrepreneur? And Bria, I'm going to come to you in a minute to ask your opinion on this, but I'll just give you a couple facts around it. It wasn't until 1989, when the Women Business Ownership Act passed, that it became illegal for a financial institution to require a woman entrepreneur to have a male co-signer. Which means in 1989, our mothers and aunts and grandmothers and cousins and friends and wives and colleagues walked into a financial institution and they didn't just hear, is your husband going to co-sign this with you? They said, who will the man be on this loan? But then think about what that means culturally, of mothers telling daughters or grandmothers telling grandchildren, banks are not safe for you and you can't get lent to here. It's one of the reasons that we decided to sponsor the report, the Impact Women-Owned Business Report, is because when you have information, you can do better. And so today, in the new report that'll come out Tuesday, it's going to say that 39.1% of all businesses are owned by women entrepreneurs, 500,000 more than when we published the report last year across the country. But that is great news. But we still have so far to go, and my favorite statistic as to that is, if women entrepreneurs to get to on parity, on par with male entrepreneurs in terms of revenue generation at the current pace will take 120 years. So we are not going to wait 120 years, and cities can do a lot, and banks can do a lot, but Bria, what can nonprofits do? What are nonprofits like yours already doing?
I got to tell you one story because you brought up the statistic about people being barred. The reason our bourbon's called forbidden is because my partner, Mary Ann Eves, could not be in her position until 1974 in the state of Kentucky. Wow. She was only allowed to be a cashier or a waitress, could not be a master distiller or work in the distillery in any other position. Exactly. So that's why we call it forbidden.
Thank you, Mary Rickman.
Wow.
But yes, Bria.
Yeah, I mean, when I discovered the power of CDFIs as a woman business owner who had my dad co-sign my first loan to open my business and went to Craigslist and the free page to get all the furniture too, when I learned about CDFIs, I'm like, wow, these things actually exist. CDFIs were born because nuns were looking to invest in communities, and black and brown communities, and women business owners that were trying to make a living for themselves. So the power is in that community. I mean, hearing from you, Mayor Williams, talking about, you convened all the businesses. That's what we do. My department, we do one-on-one business counseling with these business owners. We do cohort programs so that we can create peers, because we all know as an entrepreneur, the journey is lonely, and you're sitting there looking at your account about to overdraft, and you're afraid to tell somebody about that. But when you have these cohort programs, you can talk to each other and be like, okay, what did you do to get out of this bind? How did you fix this local recession for yourself? We also do those one-off workshops, because sometimes business owners can't commit to a whole, I'm going to do a 4 or 5 month program. They can only come on a Saturday to learn about how do I do my business taxes. So it's meeting the people where they are and being in the communities. The one thing that you just mentioned, Mayor Rickman, is that it is already hard to go into communities and figure out, how am I going to open a business? How am I going to fill out all of these forms? How am I going to get through this red tape? But imagine if you were in a different country. Imagine going to a different country, trying to open a business while trying to learn the language. Think about all those forms, learning them in a different language. And that is a lot of our clientele. Now, granted, we are the Latino Economic Development Center, and we have lots of Black American clients as well. We have lots of white women clients as well. But the Latinos, think about that gap that they have to face immediately coming into the country. So CDFIs, we help just because we know the culture, we know those nuances, we know the people's stories, we know how to relate to them.
And also, you just talked about your partnership here in the DMV, because what a city can't always do is provide in-language service or technical assistance. Do you mind just commenting here in the DMV, how are you partnering with the cities here and with the mayors here?
Sure. We have grants directly from mayor's offices. So in DC, we have a grant with the Mayor's Office of Latino Affairs, and it's to get business owners in brick and mortar restaurants. So we have funding, and we can do the TA, we can do that one-on-one coaching. TA sounds like computer work. You can do the small business development to help them, whether it's their pricing strategy, whether it's their marketing strategy, different things to help them. We also have grants directly from counties, right? So the counties can give us funding that we can put line items in the budget to get it back to the business owners, but also to help us do this work. We're a nonprofit. Help us do this work to help them in whatever ways that they need.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bria.
Yeah.
And it's a good example, because what CDFIs do by increasing capital, by providing what we call technical assistance, just as financial education for business owners, just helping a business owner know, how do I build my first plan? What is the mistake I'm making? You know, it's a business owner like Mayor Williams, who is starting with their own resources and can go somewhere and say, what should I avoid doing? Like, what are the mistakes that business owners in my position make right now, and how do I avoid them? But let me ask, how many in the room knew what a CDFI was before Bria and I just started talking about it? Raise your hands.
That's great.
You are an educated, thank you, audience. I will tell you, in most rooms that I'm in, it's 3 to 5 people out of 100. And so one of the things that we can do, that mayors can do so well, is introduce people to resources and let them know where to go. At Wells Fargo, there's a good web address if you want to jot something down, at bizresourcenavigator.com. It's a web address that we created so that if a business doesn't know where to go anywhere in the country, they type in what they're looking for, and it connects them with a CDFI like yours. Because we honestly believe that a CDFI should spend 0 time trying to find people to help, and all of their time helping people. And so bizresourcenavigator.com is a really good resource that we're proud to support.
Can I touch on the lending part of CDFI? Just because my job is in the small business development, I think about that a lot. But if you don't know about the lending portion of CDFIs, we are SBA lenders, so we can give out SBA loans. But the wonderful thing is that we're not held to the same regulations that a Wells Fargo might be. So sometimes credit score is looked at as more risky for a client's credit score, more risky at Wells Fargo. We can be a little more flexible and see, okay, maybe the client has personal collateral. Maybe the client has something else that we can include to make sure we know this loan is going to be paid back. The other thing is, we can write in grant proposals, hey, we want to fundraise for loan forgiveness. So if something does happen to that business owner, we can pull from a pot to maybe forgive that loan. So we're very flexible.
Thank you, Bria. Yeah, totally agree. And it's the reason why banks give millions or hundreds of millions. We give every dollar we got from the first round of PPP, $420 million to CDFIs for exactly this reason. But hey, Natalie, Hi. Well, I wanted to give you a minute to get warm, like literally warm and figuratively warm. So are you feeling warmed up? You good?
am.
All
I'm
right.
ready to
Well,
go.
will you share with the group who you are, what you
Absolutely.
do, and why you are part of this conversation? I know why.
Yes.
And welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, first off, good afternoon to everyone, and pardon that I was late. My name is Natalie Madeira Cofield, and I'm the CEO of the Association for Enterprise Opportunity. AEO is a nearly 35-year-old trade association that has been advocating for policies and resources to support entrepreneurial ecosystems across the country. So really what we say is that we're in the business of supporting entrepreneurs by supporting the organizations that support them. What does all of this look like? What does all of this mean? So part of the conversation that we're having right now is about what it looks like on the ground. All of us know that economic development is a local game. A lot of times federal programs, federal policies come out of Washington, D.C., and then it's at that point the state's responsibility to go after some of those funds or the federal government's responsibility to equitably distribute those funds across the United States of America. That presented and has presented in this last administration, we look forward to this next administration, opportunities for entrepreneurship centers, organizations like the Latino Economic Development Corporation, mayors, cities, municipalities, economic institutions at institutions of higher education. Those are all part of the ecosystem of organizations that AEO is working with. So when we go to Capitol Hill, we're going and talking about, let's increase the amount of funding that exists for SBDCs, our small business development programs. Let's increase the amount of funding for our women business centers. I actually recently just served as the assistant administrator at SBA, and my office was responsible for the $70 million portfolio for the Women's Business Center Network. And we did the largest expansion of women's business centers in the history of SBA while I was there. And so that statistic that you mentioned about women going into the 80s and that being the last point in time, which is not that long ago, that they needed a male to co-sign for them, is a very startling statistic for many people to understand. And it's reasons like that that organizations that exist need to continue to have their funding championed. What we saw during the pandemic was this: the distribution of resources to entrepreneurs. But there needed to come a time where the business services, the economic development corporations and centers that sit in your offices that you all have jurisdiction over, they also needed to be resourced. We are in a moment now where we're in an entrepreneurial renaissance. Nearly 21 million small businesses have been formed in the last 4 years. And that has created a great amount of demand on our centers of entrepreneurial excellence, our business service organizations. Who is going to step in the gap and support the funding that is needed for them to be able to do the work that they need to be able to do to ensure that those businesses have an opportunity to thrive? We like to say that we're in the prenatal care business, right? People love to bring out the business at the end, right? That's grown up to be a titan, King Henry, so to say, right? But at the same time, to get to be and I'm making my Super Bowl predictions here for anybody who's watching. I'm going home later on tonight. But if you want to get a King Henry, if you want a Jaden Daniels, you've got to start early. You have to start by caring about those businesses early in the formative stages. And that's why it's important for organizations not only to invest at the size where people are making $500,000, but at the size where people are making their first $5,000. Because if you can grow with the business, you will grow with the business.
That was awesome. I was just Googling what the Super Bowl is.
No, you were.
Just kidding. I really do just watch, Beyonce or Kendrick. It's a great
Well,
concert.
he'll be performing.
Surrounded, bookended by kicky ball. But Natalie, I am curious. One of the conversations we've been having a lot is about convening. And, frankly, this is one of the greatest times in history in terms of federal funds moving into cities. And how cities have employed those dollars, and I do believe that is a clear root cause of the 21 million formations, disproportionately diverse businesses. But just would love your comments on how those funds are being used. What are you hearing from entrepreneurs, from organizations like Bria's, in terms of what is still needed, and what can we do looking into this next year that has already started?
Yeah, so one of the approaches that we're taking at AEO is a regional approach. So again, we're in a room with mayors, with the U.S. Council of Mayors. what does it mean to step outside of the geographical jurisdiction that you have to ensure that the area right next to you is able to benefit and to grow as well? Because a rising tide lifts all ships. And so AEO has now 10 regions that we've expanded our operations to, and we've been launching regional programming across the country, bringing together people to have these conversations. One of the things that EDA put out about $8 billion in funds, was it had a regional economic development cluster competition. And that was the first time that you saw institutions of higher education, city governments, state governments, business service organizations, private enterprises coming together for a joint submission for federal proposals. And so we need to continue to keep seeing these type of corridors. Anyone that lives in North Carolina and up the Raleigh-Durham area knows how powerful that area is, right?
Yes, we do.
And it has often been, so I give you a look, it's often been looked at as a case study of what regionalism looks like for small business creation. Incredible amounts of venture funding, but here's another statistics that we know. This is why it's important that Wells Fargo is doing this today, is that only 1% of small businesses will ever go after venture funds. Even though it's the most sexy and talked about form of investment, the reality is that the everyday business owner, the small business owner with 10 or fewer employees that are out here doing the valiant work of creating jobs in their communities are going after loans with small business lenders. They're going to meet with their small business lending officer, and they're going into these business service organizations. What can we do next? I alluded to that with my comment of who's going to step into the gap. We don't know where federal funds will go as it relates to continuing the support of some of the programs that came out of the disaster recovery, right? And so we need to understand what role corporations play, the philanthropic community is going to play, and the role that the federal government is going to be able to play to support making sure that every small business owner has somewhere to go to get the kind of assistance that they need. And the last thing I'll say is this: certification of our business coaches is important to us at AEO. There is no true industry standard on how you are learning about how to start a business. If I'm talking to you about financial anything, I've got to be certified and it's got to be right? I's dotted and T's crossed. If I'm selling you a home, same thing. I've got to be a certified realtor and know. But if I'm talking to you about what is outside of education, and even in education, I've got to I's dot and T's crossed, be certified. But when it comes to the thing that is also one of the largest expenditures that people spend their money on, their disposable income, on the investment in their dreams, we don't have a certification for how people are talking about, you need to spend more time here, you need to be talking about this over here, you need to put your money over here. It's the same thing as a guidance counselor. I have the power with my tongue to tell you, you should apply to Harvard, or you're not good enough to get into Harvard. And both of those statements are gonna have an outcome on the way that you utilize the resources and attention that you have as a student. And so if I'm a business coach telling you something, it has that kind of impact and weight on you in, again, the formative years of your small business. And so we're advocating for the creation of some type of certification that folks can go through so that they too know what is really required to run a small business.
That was amazing. Thank you for that. Yeah, give her some love. I agree. When you're holding two things, I need you to clap, so thank you. I'd love to go back to both Mayor Williams and Mayor Rickman. We talked about three major needs, and as we're rounding the corner towards the end of our panel, and then we will get social, it will be fun, I think the themes we've heard are capital, clearly. Mayor Williams, your story about the series of no's that almost every business owner sees is so real. The lack of information and how we provide it, how we provide coaching and support. And then the third being just how you remove barriers to entry. Mayor Rickman, your example was so great around smaller restaurants and the hurdles they try and jump through that they shouldn't, right? But I'm curious, what is working? Like, where do you see you're getting the collaboration you need, you're pulling in nonprofits, you're pulling in corporations or other partners? What is working that you would want this group to know that we can duplicate across our great country?
It's very interesting because about 10 years ago, my predecessor, Steve Benjamin, and a group in town opened up what we call our Soda City Market. Started off with about 10 or 15 vendors, and now it's about 5 of our blocks downtown every Saturday, anywhere from 150 to 250 vendors. It's an incubation period. It allows these folks to check out there at a very low entry price. And so it allows them then to create relationships. And so we started using our business office of opportunity to engage with these folks, to share them with the fast track classes that we put on, learning how to manage their business and build up, making sure that they're paying all their taxes and fees and keeping up. It's one of the challenges, no matter, that we see with small business. I was the same way when I first started. I mean, I had a ledger. I wasn't keeping up with things the way it should be. But for us to go get funding in the future, even grants and everything, you've got to have a balance sheet. You've got to show that you don't have a tax liability. So
Gotta know what the balance sheet is.
Yes, exactly. But engaging with those folks and showing them, but also allowing them to know about the grant opportunities that we have, the low. But we're taking it a step further. We're redoing a new building for our city hall, and we're putting in there what we call a pop-up restaurant space. And we're going to allow people to go in there for 90 days in a brick and mortar situation that allows them to really experience, am I ready to make that step before they make a step that may take their savings away. So what's happened now is that now we've got other businesses saying, hey, I got this empty space available. Nobody's been there for a while. Can I put somebody in there in a pop-up situation? They may be there for a month. They may be there for 6 months. But it'll draw attention to my space. It allows me to help incubate it. And so it's a collaboration. It's working with the business community. The other thing that we're working on is stealing a model that they did in Charlotte, North Carolina. In Charlotte, North Carolina, they created a fund to help with housing, to keep housing prices low in their community. And they went to the business community, the major corporations, said, we don't want you to donate. We want you to loan us some of your capital. We're going to give you a return. A goodwill return, a lower return hurdle. Well, we're taking all the information they share with us and we're trying to do the same thing for entrepreneurs so we can create a pool of funding at low interest loans that we can get out there to help bolster people take that napkin and turn it into a dream. And so all of this is being engaged and giving our employees the training, the autonomy to make decisions in the economic development. We also added a business liaison, which I think is probably the best thing that we did. We did it in 2 phases where we have a small business liaison that any business can call and help them. And then we have a special person that does nothing but help people get through the process. They hand walk them through the process. So they make sure they've done everything. So they're not standing there waiting on a CEO or, I don't have my business license. Where's my insurance certificate? Do I have everything lined up? If I'm a restaurant, am I prepared to pay the hospitality tax that I'm supposed to be collecting? Doing all of those things. So making sure that we're taking any question away and just providing answers in a pathway. So
That was great. Thank you, Mayor Rickman.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We're doing quite a few things. I will say that it's been very beneficial to be a small business owner as mayor because we get to do things a little unconventional. Bureaucracy, I've learned to appreciate it, but I've also learned to navigate it. And so what we initially was doing was there was so much money available for technical assistance, TA. And so we created a website at the city, and it provides resources from learning how to start a business to actually maintaining and sustaining your business. And in that website, we also have an academy you can sign up for. And if you go through that academy, once you're in it, I think it's called Durham Business 360 or something, but once you go to that academy, you get a $35,000 grant for your business. So,
that's awesome.
thank you. So not only are we providing the intellectual resources, we're providing the fiscal resources as well. But something that I'm really, really, really excited about that it's new to Durham, I'm leading it now, is we often talk about affordable housing, but I am pushing my community to talk about affordable living. And affordable living means that we need to look at all of the factors around you that contribute to the way that you live, your lifestyle. And if you are working at a coffee shop, right, you're you're getting money through tips and your hourly pay. First thing we did was we set a city standard that people can opt into, which is our own minimum wage. Because North Carolina, while it's a great state in many ways, the minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. All right, so in Durham, the minimum wage is $19.75. We set that. Now, with that being said, where I'm going with this is the way we do development now, we looked at our zoning guidelines, and we said, all right, in this area, this is going to be a design district, meaning anything that's built through here, you don't need to come through the city council for it. But here are the guidelines that you need to follow. And so now our new development, you can build a huge structure, 500 apartments, but you're going to have all local businesses in the storefront. We're a college town. We have 3 colleges in our town, so there are a lot of coffee shops. There's a coffee shop in almost every apartment building. They all stay packed. And many of them can afford to live in the apartment building they are in. So what we're doing is we're tying small business to a development. We have this standard that you can opt in, and we're creating this demand. So now we have this ecosystem where everything is mutually reliant on each other. And so now we have more small businesses that are providing a higher return on the dollar. 41 cents on the dollar stays local when you shop local versus 14 cents on the dollar in a national chain. However, national chains play a valuable role as well by balancing it out. So right now I'm courting a national chain restaurant to go in an anchor space because they can afford to as a part of an overall development option. And they're going to bring people, they're going to draw people, and those folks are going to go to the bike shop next door while they're going to this Capitol Grill. And so it really is about, design and strategy and intentionality, and that's what I'm working on in Durham. We're about to reimagine our master plan, and we're doing it now. It's like if you have a small business, yes, you can work with that developer and this medical center. It's all tied together, and then we're producing that greater quality of life that we all want.
I'm going to come right to you, yeah. I think that what I took away from both mayors, and this being my, I think, 4th time at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, is the reason that this conference happens here in this city and then again in another city across the country is because the solutions sometimes are very direct. And I think that's what we heard both from Mayor Wickham and from Mayor Williams. It is removing regulation or improving regulation, making things easier, but it's also filling vacancies. I don't think any mayor wants to walk down a street, especially in the heart of their city, and see where small businesses used to be. But it also takes all of us helping to share these great practices and ideas. That's what I love about this conference, and that's why I'm so glad we got to dive even deeper here at Hip Politics. But I am a stand he for she. It's something WeBank uses, which is the certifier of women-owned business. They call a he for she a man who stands behind the women or behind the woman. And so I'm going to give the last word to the 2 women on our panel. And I feel like Natalie's itching. So Bria, do you mind having the last word?
Sure.
All right.
I'm glad to be sitting next to all these folks, so I don't have to say another word. But
All right.
yeah.
I do thank you for that. My only comment was going to be the repurposing of existing space. I think every city, suburban, and rural, suburban adjacent community is struggling with parcel space right now. Whether it be manufacturing space that needs to be repurposed, downtown office space that has vacancy rates that you've never seen before. And so I think part of this is about how do you allow for small business owners to creatively utilize these spaces and do so for some sustainable amount of time that allows them to get their legs. What we saw during the pandemic is that we would see a program like this happen, and it would happen for like a year. Well, the reality of the fact is that's not how that works, right? You're not like all of a sudden successful in 1 year. It takes a business about 3 to 5 years to really get their sea legs. And so these programs need to represent that as well. So if we have access to space, can we repurpose it? Can we remodel it to include commercial at bottom and residential at top in ways that we hadn't before, in ways that maybe our zoning won't allow for, right? The other thing I'll say is the technology that people are talking about, they want small businesses to use, the technology that is required for a business to survive in this day and age is the same technology that our local municipal governments need to adopt. the pandemic showed hand for everybody. The city services were scrambling to try to figure out how to deliver their services while complaining about not having technology adoption for small businesses. And so we've got to, across the board, make it possible for someone to never have to walk into a city office to get something done, because that is the future of whatever we are doing together.
I think the only thing that I would add, recommendation-wise, especially, with mayors in the room, is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are organizations like mine, LEDC, that we are already working with the people. We already know the business owner on the corner who needs a loan, but he's not going down to the city government, as you said, to try to ask a question. He's not doing that. Think about how many times in our community somebody says, oh, I got a guy. I know this guy who can help me with this. Or, everybody has a guy. We are the guy. So investing and helping support CDFIs and local institutions like this, in turn, you are helping the business owners, the ones that are making their first $5,000. So that's my word.
Well, I'm going to keep my promise and only pass the mic back to Quentin to close this out. Thank you. You've been an incredible group to have this conversation with. So, Quentin.
To all the members of the Business Council of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, we do appreciate you and your steadfastness in the work that we do. Again, I can't say thank you enough. Our regards from Mayor Jones, who had to catch a flight back to St. Louis. But I definitely advise you, if you get an opportunity, please go look up her story as a business owner as well. As a woman business owner, now mayor, city treasurer of St. Louis. Impactful story. Definitely get to know someone you don't know, share, learn how we can collaborate together. In the world of small business, I say don't moan alone. Learn how you can be in the in the trenches with as we all navigate this space. And I will turn it over to my co-chair, Bree.
But so great to be with you today. Siemens is a technology company and an infrastructure provider. We work across the U.S., 45,000 employees represented here today. Also, Denise Quarles, our head of strategy for Siemens USA, Patrick McGarry, and Roosevelt Holmes from Government Affairs with me as well. So Siemens actually was a startup itself in 1847. We're one of the oldest and largest companies in the world. And we can't do it alone. You hear the ecosystem buzzword. We've talked a lot about the role of government, of industry, of academia. And nothing rings more true than how Siemens has built its success and serves as an economic contributor here in the U.S. I'm a little biased. I started my career in local government as a chief of staff for a mayor. So cities, it's where shit gets done on the front lines with our Main Street business districts as well. We're not streaming live, right? I can say that perfect. But it's been great to be a part of the conversation today. Bria, you stole my colleague's quote, but at Siemens, when we look at our 12,000 suppliers in the U.S., over a quarter of those are small and diverse businesses. But we don't just want to meet new small businesses and bring them on the journey and support them on their journey, but meet them where they are. And so that was Denise's words of wisdom, so in good company. But again, thank you all today, and enjoy the conversation.